So hi everybody, welcome to Flynn Space. Apologies for only bringing part of my voice, but it's fighting the elements over the course of the week. I think it's finally gotten to me. Some of the most memorable music and most memorable discussions that I've participated in the years I've been coming to the festival have been involved with some of the great artists of Latin jazz. And one of the greatest is with us today, Poncho Sanchez, who's going to be performing tomorrow night. And also Francisco Torres, great trombonist and Poncho's musical director. So I was going to start by talking about the concept of Latin jazz, and I'll throw it to both of you. But I particularly in thinking about the music you've made and the blend of the elements, it strikes me that you're almost the most balanced of the Latin jazz greats in terms of the amount of jazz you incorporate, the great jazz artists you've collaborated with over time. And when I looked at your biography, it sounded as if jazz and Latin music were something that you were absorbing from an early age simultaneously. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 11 kids. Thank God all my brothers and sisters are alive and well today. Wow. And we all live in Los Angeles, California. So we see each other quite a bit. But my brothers and sisters were the first ones to get into music. No musicians in my family other than myself, just me, out of the 11. But my brothers and sisters love music as well as my mother and father, and who have, of course, passed on now. And my brothers and sisters caught like the first wave of the mambo and cha-cha-cha music that came to Los Angeles by way of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico City, New York, L.A., And we're in Los Angeles, and they caught that first wave in the late 50s and early 60s. And so you're absolutely correct, Bob. I grew up in my home listening to Latin music. In those days, they just called it música latina or música cubana, which is Cuban music or Latin music, or they called it the mambo or the cha-cha-cha. Nowadays, they call it salsa. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they call it also Afro-Cuban music, which we call Latin jazz nowadays, right, basically. And so, I caught all that as a very young boy at home, as well as one of my older brothers loved, Dizzy Gillespie and Count Basie and Duke Ellington. So from time to time, they would put some of those records on. So, but also, I grew up in a Chicano neighborhood or a Mexican-American neighborhood in Los Angeles. And most people in my neighborhood at that time loved doo-wop music. Yeah. That's when the doo-wop thing was going on, what they call oldie but goodies, and all that. So I grew up with all that, the Art LeBeau show, the Johnny Otis show, of course, American Bandstand, all that stuff, including jazz and Latin music. So that whole melting pot, you can hear it in my music.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Francisco, tell us a little about your background, where you're from, and the kind of music you were listening to as a kid.
It had nothing to do with jazz. Okay. I'm Mexican, and I was born in the northern part of Mexico, which is it's very norteño music, banda music, and further you have to go to Arizona to listen to any jazz. So I came to the United States when I was 10 years old, 1984, and I never thought I was going to be a musician. I was really big on computers, and I had this band director that was kind of weird. He was really like trying to get people involved in beginning band when I was going from junior high school to high school. And he kept bugging me. And he says, "You got to sign up for beginning band." I was like, "No, band people are nerds." Just kept going. And finally, one day I just said, "You know what?" My mom said, "No way." He goes, "No, I just called her yesterday. She said it was great." So I kind of got cornered. I figured I'll do 1 year beginning band. And I honestly didn't even think musicians could make money. I thought it was just a hobby. And so I spent all of high school thinking that. And then here I am, so playing music.
Now, you both mentioned your background as Mexican Americans. And I think the narrative of Latin music and the interaction with jazz that a lot of us have heard or been told, it involves musicians from Cuba, later Puerto Rico, coming to New York, and it's developed on the East Coast. And I know there were important bands on the West Coast, but then I tend to think of the people who recorded for Fantasy and would be more based in the Bay Area. So, I mean, tell us who were the LA bands, the West Coast bands, the people you were listening to growing up that we should know more about?
Well, Eddie Cano, for one. Eddie Cano, the great piano player. Eddie Cano, I think his big hit was A Taste of Honey, I think it was.
Okay.
But Eddie Cano was a great piano player in Los Angeles who played jazz and Latin jazz. And I also had the honor and pleasure of working with Eddie Cano's group. I was with Eddie Cano's group for 4 years until he passed away, as well as Claire Fisher, the great Claire Fisher, piano arranger, everything. Genius. I also worked with Claire Fisher's band. As a matter of fact, I was the co-leader of the Salsa Picante, Claire Fisher Salsa Picante 2+2 band for many years. And Rene Touzet, another great piano player, was from Cuba and went to Los Angeles and started a Latin band in the 50s and 60s. Had a lot of great guys in his band from Los Angeles, LA musicians. So Rene Block, I'm trying to think, and people like that, you know, in LA, that's the people that were doing the Latin thing. Also, the history of Latin music, the way it got popular in Los Angeles was Chico Sesma. Chico Sesma was a trombone player in a big band, and he was also a disc jockey. He was the first Latin disc jockey in Los Angeles to play what they call salsa music nowadays, but you know, it's música latina. And so that my brother and sister would hear his radio show. First, he used to come out once a week only for 1 hour. Then he got more popular, and they gave him 2 hours. Then he came out a couple of days out of the week, you know. As a matter of fact, one of my records, Psychedelic Blues, a couple of CDs back, we did his theme song, which was called Con Sabor Latino. And that was his theme song. It was recorded by Rene Touzet, and then nobody had recorded that song for, God, I don't know, since the early 60s, and then we recorded it about 3 years ago again. Okay. So Chico Sesma and people like that, that's LA-based Latin bands. And of course, then you go up to the Bay Area, and it was Tjader and people like that, yeah.
In reading, again, some of your biography, the conga drums were not your first instrument, and I was curious about how you worked your way to the drums, because there were a few before that, right?
Yeah, well, being the youngest of 11 kids and growing up in a poor neighborhood, like I said, everybody loved music in my house, but nobody knew how to play music. And the guy across the street, who's still a friend of mine, his name is Benny Rodriguez. Benny Rodriguez was about 4 or 5 years older than me. He was in high school, and I was like in 6th grade or 5th grade kid. And he had a rhythm and blues band. And it was a big band with about 3 or 4 horn players and about 3 guitar players and piano player, the whole thing. They had a girl singer. And that's when Motown, Motown had only been out for like a couple of months. It was brand new, Motown, the Motown sound from the Motor City, and they were doing tunes like that and old rhythm and blues stuff, you know, Honky Tonk and Ray Charles stuff. So I would watch them rehearse, and the only thing that was available to me was a guitar, because Benny had a guitar across the street. Okay. So every once in a while, I'd ask him, "Can I touch it? Can I play it? Can I play?" And he'd show me a couple little chords or whatever, and so I started learning to play the guitar. And what I did, I learned with a couple of friends down the street, same age group as me. And we learned like Honky Tonk and What I Say and just a couple of real simple tunes. And then I moved back to Laredo, Texas. I was born in Laredo, Texas. And I moved to Los Angeles when I was 4 years old. Moved back to Laredo when I was about 12, 13 years old by then. And thinking I was a pretty good guitar player. I knew 3 songs, you know. And I went back to Laredo. And when I got back to Laredo, Texas, nobody knew what I was talking about with music. Nobody was really into music, like that type of music. So I practiced these 3 songs for a whole year. And then we moved back to Los Angeles. And I went directly to the neighborhood band where I was learning with these 2 other guys. And I said, hey, I really play good now. Well, when I walked in, they were rehearsing and they had a band already. I had been gone for a year, and I walked in. I couldn't believe it. They had electric guitars, a drummer, and they were playing and instrumentals and playing a bunch of stuff. They already had a couple of gigs, and I was in shock. Here I am with the 3 little songs, and they already had a band with a list of tunes, and I kind of hit the guitar like this when I walked in, because I got embarrassed. I said, wow, I was gone too long, and they kept progressing and learning from this Benny Rodriguez guy, what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I didn't. So what happened at that time, they told me, we don't need another guitar player. There was 3 guitar players in the band. They said, we need a singer. And I sang to myself, but I didn't sing in front of anybody. But I wanted to be in the band. So they said, Poncho, there's a microphone there, man. Why don't you try your best? We're looking for a singer. I was a little skinny kid in those days. And like I told you, I had a lot of brothers and sisters. My sisters, even today, they're still good dancers, mambo dancers and all that. Mm. Well, they taught me how to dance. I could dance, you know what I mean? And so I started. I think I did a James Brown number, and I did the whole thing.
I
started doing the whole thing and the microphone, and I just played the part as best I could. And after the song was over, they all told me, "Wow, man, Poncho, you sing great," And I was the lead vocalist of that band for 5 years. Wow. And I learned right on the spot how to do. They gave me a stack of 45 records and said, learn these songs. We got a wedding to do this weekend. And I ended up becoming a lead front man of that band for 5 years. And it's amazing. I've been the lead vocalist of every band I've ever been in my life from that day till today. Okay. And all just happened like on the spot.
So you're still not playing the conga drums at this point?
No, I was in like 9th grade or something and singing. And then I started, at first I learned to play the timbales. I got some old timbales from an old friend. And I just taught myself how to play, listening to old Tito Puente records. And then I finally got my hand on a conga drum. And the same thing, I learned to play congas by looking at the back of album covers. And I would see a guy in a picture like this. And then I put the record on and try to listen to the the sounds.
Listen to a lot of Ray Barretto
all
with Gene Ammons.
All that stuff, man. Yeah. Candido, Mongo, everybody.
Potato. And,
those are my heroes, man. All those guys you mentioned. Yeah. And they were my friends. I actually got to hang with them, record with them, play with them, all that stuff. And so it was like a dream come true for me. I ended up meeting all my heroes, including Dizzy Gillespie and Mongo Santa Maria, and I played with Tjader for 7.5 years. I mean, it was like a dream come true for me.
I'll bet. Now, Francisco, how did the instrument find you, or how did you find your instrument? Did the band leader say, okay, now we got you in the band, we need a trombone player? Or?
Well, remember going back to the story about me being in beginning band, so the only thing left was alto saxophone. So we were poor too. My mom could not afford renting instruments. So okay, well, and I go, and it's shiny. Oh. So I mean, I was horrible at it. And then, unbeknownst to me, that once you sign up for beginning band, you they automatically put you in band the next year. So I didn't know that you had to go opt out. So there I am, I get my schedule. I'm like, oh, band. I'm like, band. So anyways, but when I get in there, my best friend's playing tuba, and this goes to show you what the heck I was thinking. Oh, you know what? I think I'll switch to tuba. Big old sousaphone from little saxophone to big old. But I figured, well, I get to hang out with my best friend 24/7, and maybe that lasted about a month, and then I picked up a euphonium. I'm in 10th grade at the time. I picked up a euphonium, which is like a baritone horn. And I was just messing around with it. And the band director saw me and goes, you want to play that? I'm like, because he only had 2 tuba players in the low brass section. I said, well, I'm just messing around with it. He goes, no, you'll be fine. Okay, well, I'll give it a try. So anyways, I did that. I said, I'll just play it for 1 year, and then next year I'll go back to tuba. Well, ends up that 11th grade, I'm still playing it. I show up early to class one day, and the jazz band's rehearsing. I'm like, well, what is this? Jazz? Like, and they're playing a piece of classical gas as a big band version.
Right,
so I was like, wow, like this is kind of you know, this is really cool. So I say, I want to be in the jazz band. He says, well, you don't play trombone. He says, oh man, but well, can you teach me? He goes, no, that was my band director. So he says, well, there's one in there if you want to try to pick it up and figure it out or something. That's all he said. So I grabbed the trombone, which I remember the slide was like, and I bought myself a book that showed the positions, took it home over Christmas vacation, came back. He says, can I play for you now? Can I, you know? And I was already playing euphonium, so the mouthpiece thing was not a big deal. But I said, go ahead. So then I played a couple of things. He goes, well, you're you're a lot better than about half the trombone players in the jazz band right now, so I think you'll be all right. And that's how I started. I remember my first jazz festival was the Leno Hampton Jazz Festival. They were going
in Idaho?
In Idaho, yeah. So that was it. That's how I started playing trombone.
It kind of fascinates me that to get in the jazz band, you had to play trombone because, to my mind, trombone's such a beautiful instrument, but it has a profile in Latin music above and beyond a lot of other music now. And I wonder, I mean, if you have any thoughts on why it's still such a central voice in Latin music.
Oh, well, Eddie Palmieri had a lot to do with it. I named Generoso Jimenez, trombonist from Cuba. Because he was a trombone soloist, Generoso, with Benny Moré, which is probably the greatest singer
yeah.
that came out of Cuba. So, but he was like a feature soloist. So it wasn't like he was playing parts. It was like, okay, here you go. You know, you just go and he'd emulate a lot of the singers, like the way the singers phrased.
Right.
In salsa music, there's what's called just kind of like a rapper. You know how a rapper just comes up with a real rapper. I mean, that should be exact. Comes up with like, you know, rhymes and stuff and freestyle.
Yeah.
That's what a salsa singer, a real good salsa singer, will do. He'll come up with stuff out of thin air, and so in that kind of phrasing, the trombone player kind of, if you imitate that, then all of a sudden it goes, oh man, like you're killing, you're awesome. So when everything came over, when music started arriving in New York, matter of fact, the term salsa was born in New York. It was. The reason it says salsa because it was like a mixture of everything. So it was like a sauce. You know, I mean, the real term of like what you dance is like the mambo, the guaracha, cha-cha-cha, all that stuff. And then Eddie Palmieri's band exploited the La Perfecta,
yeah.
with two trombones. And man, everybody just said, oh, we love that sound. That's the sound. We're going to go with that. And I remember in Venezuela, you had, there was a band called Dimensión Latina, Oscar de Leon's first band. It was like three trombones, right? Three trombones. And then he had another band called La Crítica, no trombones. And then it just like, boom, it just took off. So that's why I think it just keeps, I mean, in any other band, the trombone player, there's a saying, last to hire, first to fire. Because when you have a band, and you say, well, we got budget for another horn. We already got a sax and a trumpet. Well, let's add a trombone. And then, okay, so now you got three-piece horn section. And then, budget got cut. Trombone player goes. But in a salsa band, the trombone player is usually the first guy to get hired. You know, the rhythm section, and then we got to have a trombone player. So.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of people I had wanted to talk to you about who were, I think, very influential early in your career before you were even a band leader, Tjader and Claire Fisher. And I think it surprises a lot of people when you talk about who are the great Latin jazz forerunners, I guess you'd say, since the term is more recent than when they got started. But, well, it's this Swedish-American guy from St. Louis, you know, and Claire Fisher, who I think his family has a background in Germany or something. And but these guys were very influential and completely embraced by the Latin music community, right? You just talk a little about your experience with these guys and how you hooked up with them.
Yeah, you know, I met Cal Tjader. Of course, all my brothers and sisters had Cal Tjader records all over the house, so I knew who Cal Tjader was ever since I was a little boy. And I was playing with a local band in Los Angeles. The name of the band was Sabor, and it was just a little band that played a combination of weddings, wedding songs, and all this kind of stuff. Soul music and Latin music and Mexican music, all a mixture, you know. And I was in that band, and we were performing one night at a local club in Los Angeles, and it was a predominantly a Latino club. You know, like 98% all Latino people in there, because we did some salsa stuff and mixture of stuff. And this white guy walked in with a hat. I remember he had a hat on, and he stuck out like a sore thumb, you know. We walked in, I'm playing, I could see him walking in. I said, well, you know, what's that guy doing here at this club? But anyway, long story short, I took a break and went to the bar to get a beer, and he says, hey, man, what's your name? My name is Poncho, you know. He goes, man, you sound great on congas. I go, thank you. He says, I'm a good friend of Cal Tjader's. And I went like, yeah, right, you know. Yeah, right, you know. And he says, you want a beer? You want a drink? I said, yeah, you buying, I'm drinking, you know. He got me one, and I said, hey, man, thanks for the drink. And I said, hey, don't forget to tell your friend Cal Tjader about me. And I walked away, and when I came up to the bandstand with the guys in the band, I said, see that guy over there at the bar? And they go, yeah, the white guy that walked in? The whole band has seen it. And I said, he says he's a good friend of Cal Tjader's. And they go, yeah, right, he's my uncle too, you know. Nobody believed the guy, right? Well, 2 weeks went by, and Cal Tjader came into town from San Francisco down to Los Angeles. Like he always came to town about 3 or 4 times a year. Right. And he was at concerts by the Sea Redondo Beach, Howard Rumsey's club. Mm-hmm. And of course, I always went to go see Cal Tjader when he came to town. So we went to go see Cal Tjader, and it's in the Redondo Beach Pier in California. You got to walk downstairs, and the club's underneath the pier. I started walking down them stairs, and there's that guy. His name was Ernie Steels. Ernie was talking to Cal Tjader at the front door. Man, I stopped dead in my tracks, man. I could not believe that he knew Cal Tjader, man. Many years later, Cal told me, you know, he wasn't really a really good friend of mine. But Cal was a medic in World War II. Cal was in the Navy. Well, he was in the Navy with Cal. That's how he knew Cal Tjader, just like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Acquaintance. Well, I started walking downstairs, and I froze for a minute, and he looked up the stairs and says, Cal, there he is, Poncho Sanchez. That's the guy I'm talking to you about. I went, you know, vaya.
Oh,
hey, ¿qué tal, cómo está?
Taxi's running on Puerto Rican time.
oh, damn.
We were just joined by Ray Vega, who's also going to
Yeah, Ray.
be playing with Poncho's band tomorrow.
Te quiero. Anyway, so I'm coming down them stairs, and I'm walking down slower now, going, couldn't believe I was with my wife. I said, there's a guy that I thought was lying, you know. And he says, Cal, this is Poncho. Poncho, this is Cal. And Cal Tjader says, you know, when I come to Los Angeles, a lot of people tell me that you're a great conga drummer. I got scared by the moment. I get scared, you know, nervous. And I said, thank you. He said, you want to sit in? And I said, when? He goes, right now, tonight. And he says, I'll call you out of the crowd. Man, I couldn't believe it. We paid to get in, and we sat down. Now, you want a beer? No, I don't want a beer. You know, I don't want anything. I was ready for a nice drink until I met Cal Tjader. And then he said I was going to sit in with him. Well, sure enough, he called me out of the crowd. I was supposed to play one song. I played 4 songs that night, and asked for my phone number. Called me a week later and hired me. He hired me for just a week in Los Angeles. My first gig with Cal Tjader was New Year's Eve at the Coconut Grove in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, opposite of Carmen McRae's band, on New Year's Eve, 1975. And I was with him for 7.5 years, and I was with him the day he died in Manila, in the Philippines, of a massive heart attack.
Now, how did you get your gig with Mr. Sanchez?
Well, I was actually, I knew of Poncho through somebody who gave me a tape. He gave me a tape of La Familia. It was a tape.
Cassette.
A cassette. Sorry, cassette. I gotta be. And then he also gave me a Tito Puente, one. on the one that, on Broadway. Are you on that?
No, I speak.
Okay. So I started playing the tapes, and I go, no, I liked his better. I mean, no disrespect to Tito, but I wasn't. Tito was so deep at the time that I was like, I wasn't really getting it, and in the sense that because Poncho, see, when you go see a Poncho Sanchez show, you get jazz, you get some soul music, you get salsa, so it's like a big old, it's a plethora of things.
Right.
So somebody's gonna pick something up that they're gonna like. So I was like, wow, like this is pretty trippy. Like I really like it. And then he had a song called "Let a Woman Be a Woman, and Let a Man Be a Man." And it was a funk song, Yeah. That was the one I was kept playing. Like, oh man, it's got a horn section, and I played trombone at the time. So, make a long story short, I started playing around town. I would go to these jam sessions. There was a particular one in Long Beach, and Poncho has a compadre, Oscar. And I used to play in a band with Oscar, and Oscar had already mentioned me to Poncho. Oh, you got to check this kid out. And Poncho's like, oh, I'm cool. I don't need a trombone player. So here I am doing this jam session, and the stage was really high. And who comes waltzing in but him and his wife, and they were just having dinner down the street. So he always loves to go check out music, and so they stopped having a drink at the place and checking out whatever. And I talked to him a little bit there, and hey man, blah blah blah, and so I mentioned to him, I'm getting ready. I want to move to New York. I'm getting ready to do all that. And he goes, oh, well, that's great, but that was it. About a month later, he was a guest artist with one of the college bands, and they brought me in as a ringer. And I remember the leader of the big band, Teacher, saying, oh, Francisco Torres sitting in today, filling in for so and so, and he's getting ready to move to New York. I had already got an apartment and everything. And like about 2 weeks, or I want to say 2 weeks later, 3 weeks, I get a call from Scott. He goes, hey man, you want to audition for the gig? I'm like,
I'm moving to New York.
Of course I said yes right away. I was like, of course, And I went on audition, and here I am. So that's exactly how I made it.
Now he's the musical director of the band.
Yeah. So
I want to ask you about your concept of the band when you formed the band, because it's not like Tjader's band, and it's not like La Perfecta. And just talk about when it came time to be a band leader, how to decide what kind of band you want to lead.
Well, I always wanted to be in Tjader's band. That's all I wanted. But when I was with Tjader's band, I had a chance. Well, he always used to take all December off, the whole month of December. So I put a little band together so I can get some little local gigs in December in Los Angeles. So I put this band together, and I just started doing stuff that I liked, which was Tito Puente's music, Mongo Santa Maria's music, and Ray Barreto's band. I liked all that sort of thing, and then I liked soul music, So I kind of put all this little band together, but it was just on the side, you know what I mean? And then I had my band for about almost 2 years, but just in the wings, so to speak. And I even, Claire Fisher got me a contract with Discovery Records. My first 2 records were on Discovery Records, her label. And I recorded the band I had, I remember with the Banda Brothers and South Crack Yellow and Dick Mitchell. They weren't ready to record yet. They actually were nervous to even perform, We had a rehearsal band.
And these are guys who ended up being with you for like 20 years.
Yeah, they ended up being with me about 20, 25 years. So anyway, I ended up recording. Claire Fisher helped me record my first 2 records on Discovery. And then when Cal passed away, Cal had just helped me sign a contract with Concord Records 6 months before he passed. I signed my first contract with Concord Picante Records, and that was about 31 years ago, and I'm still with Concord. And Cal Tjader helped me get that together. But I started putting the band together, and as soon as Cal Tjader died, a lot of people told me, Poncho, you should take over the Cal Tjader band, get a real good vibe player, and just play all of Cal's music. And I said, Well, nobody can play like Tjader, and I still think nobody can play vibes like Tjader. He had a certain touch, a certain groove, never overplayed, never.
And had his own sound. on the
Just the
instrument,
best. To me, he's still the greatest vibes, But anyway, I said, that's Cal's music. I want to do my music. So I took some Tjader ideas. I took some Mongo Santa Maria ideas because I was a big fan of Mongo, and by then I knew Mongo very well also, and that's when I met Ray also in those days. And so I put the band together, and Ray Barretto's band, I liked his band. So I just started forming my own sound and style with all of that kind of put together,
Okay. Now, to be the musical director of a band that has a 30-year history, what kind of challenge does that present? Because they've already got a profile and they've got a body of music already, and now you're going to, take it forward, add to that. Talk about that challenge.
Well, one of the things you have to be real careful is, especially when a band has a sound, just like Tito Puente, Ray Barretto. Like Ray Barretto had 3 trumpets and a trombone. That was his sound. Tito had the big band sound, towards the end, two saxes, 2 trombones, and 2 trumpets, or 3 saxes. I can't remember. But so when you write, I would never write like the way Chucho Valdez plays, like for his band, the way he arranges for his band. There's no way that's not what Poncho does, and vice versa. So when you arrange stuff, especially in the last few records, we've been taking it out a little more in the last few records, just the pieces we have right now, the gentlemen in the band now are just extremely, extremely flexible and extremely knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. So it creates a lot more fun opportunities because it takes stuff, we're taking it out a little more as opposed to before it was very, very straight ahead. But as far as the arranging part, you just have to be real careful that you don't start getting like, weird chords and, cadenzas and things like that, and real out stuff. This is not what Poncho does. That's not that he doesn't enjoy it or appreciate it, but just as an arranger, you kind of have to just keep that, in a straight line. And with the guys too, like sometimes, Poncho's the first guy to say, "Hey, just play." But then if you start banging on the keyboard or just playing, then it's like, well, that's not what we do. You got to keep it. You got to keep it in. So you have to keep all the guys happy, just letting them know, do your thing. But there's a tradition here. There's a sound that needs to kind of go. And honestly, for the most part, it's kind of like Poncho's kind of like Count Basie in the sense that Count Basie had Thad Jones and Clark Terry. He had all these great players. Frank West, Frank Foster,
yeah.
And it was like great improvisers, but it still sounded like Count Basie. Curtis Fuller was in the band for a while. Fred Wesley was in the band for a while too, Count Basie. But he still, you hear a Count Basie record and it's Count Basie.
Well, now there are stories about all these guys who are great writers, and they'd bring the charts in, and Basie would take a pencil and scratch stuff out. Do you get into any of that?
A little bit, not too much, but they're like Francisco was saying, nowadays it's usually we already kind of agree on which way we're going and what's going to happen. And Francisco, I don't have to tell him too much. He knows the way I want to go a lot now. Or if I have ideas, I don't read or write music myself. So Francisco comes to my house and sits on the piano at my home. I got a conga drum, and I start humming them all my ideas, and he's writing all these ideas out, So that's how I write songs, through piano players, But the thing is he knows more or less where I'm always want to go with it. But being the band leader and I know what I want and where I'm going, there'll be times I say, "Hey, Francisco, that section sounds a little too whatever it might be."
Yeah.
Too busy or not busy enough or it's not matching the background. More in the early years. Nowadays, he learned all that stuff. When he first started writing, he didn't know all that stuff. I would say, "Man, that's the clave you're against the clave with the little background parts." And he listen to it and go, "Oh yeah, huh? Wait." He learned it like that. Now he tells me stuff. So it's not a problem. But in the early years, yes, I used to, like, guys would bring in charts and say, man, this whole section here is not cool, man. We should just take that section out and just go back to the bridge here, whatever. Because, and they would check it out and say, actually, that's probably a good idea. Would, the tune's too long or something. You know what I'm saying? So I just do stuff like that.
It also strikes me that you have a range that's pretty broad. I mean, on your last album, you do crosscut saw with an electric guitar solo
Yeah,
that
man.
could be, a blues band from the 50s or something. Do you ever get any blowback from your audience about, man, that's not the salsa we were looking for or something?
No, not really. I have not yet. I'm maybe not afraid to tell me something because I might tell them something back,
Yeah, okay.
But no, I mean, I'm just recording and doing the music that I grew up with and that I love. You know what I mean? And like you said, crosscut saw. That's Albert King.
Yeah.
Albert King. Man, I grew up listening to that when it first came out when I was a kid. And I love that song Crosscut. I've always loved that song Crosscut Saw. So I told Francisco, man, we got to get some kid to come play the guitar. And then there's a guy in L.A. that I knew his father, and I knew this guy when he was a little kid. And for years he told me, hey, Poncho, you got to hear my son. He sings blues really good. And I thought, yeah, really? You think so? I finally went to see him. I said, damn. I told Francisco, that boy does sing good blues. Man, he can play, So we brought him in, and Francisco did an arrangement on the crosscut saw thing. On that particular tune, the only thing I told Francisco, you do what you want with it. I said, just don't take out that riff, da ba da ba 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 da ba 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 ba, that little funky
Right,
horn
yeah,
line
sure.
behind the background. I said, make sure you leave that one in because that's my favorite part. You know what I mean? So he left that in and he changed some other stuff around. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. When people talk about jazz and what's happened to the jazz audience and what have you, for decades now, we've heard the argument, well, when jazz was popular, people danced to it. And then they stopped dancing to it, and now it became like an art form, And one thing about Latin jazz and Latin music is people still dance to it. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on the importance of that in terms of the music, whether how many dances you play, let's say, as a percentage of the gigs you do, and how important it is to your music still.
Well, it's good. It's all good. Most of the stuff we play is danceable. You know what I mean? We either play as a mambo or a rumba or a guaracha, bolero, merengue, the cha-cha-cha, of course, the guajira. It's all danceable. You can dance to all that. And, of course, all those rhythms I mentioned are dances also. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you can dance to all of that, and it's good, But we love jazz, too, so we love to play in a house just like this where people are sitting just watching. But 9 times out of 10, before the night's over, I mean, there's always a group of people over there and a group of people over there, and they're all dancing. And that's all good. And the people that don't want to dance, they want to check out the solos or the jazz part of the band, they sit and have their drink, you know what I mean? So it actually works very well both ways. And we have done straight up salsa festivals and salsa bailes, which are dances. We've done our share of salsa clubs and dances, and it's good, But for me, I think Latin jazz is the greatest, the greatest music in the world to me because it has, all these great things. It has the foundations and the melodies, harmonies, the theory of jazz. It has all the sophistication of jazz, yet it has a flavor, el sabor, the flavor, and the rhythms and the dance of all the Latin rhythms. You put those two things together, you got Latin jazz. Yeah. And for me, on top of that, I was born in the United States. I was born in Laredo, Texas. I'm an American. And to me, it's American. Latin jazz is American music because it was born when Chano Pozo met Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, there's an argument that maybe somebody in Cuba was playing it before them or in somebody's garage in Cuba or whatever. I mean, But when the world found out about it is when Chano Pozo met Dizzy, man. That's when it happened. And to me, they're the grandfathers of Latin jazz, and Latin jazz is American music. It's our music, you know what I mean?
Now,
I was just going to say, one of the things that we forget sometimes, especially the patrons of Latin jazz and jazz, is music is entertainment. So one of the things that I think has kept Poncho viable for so many years is that when you come to see a show, you get everything. You get the Latin jazz, you get the jazz ballads, then you get a little funk, and then by the end you get the salsa and the boogaloo, and so then everybody's dancing. So like, oh man, I went to a jazz concert. Wow, the jazz is cool, Like I mean, no offense to some of the most amazing people like Keith Jarrett, and I mean it's unbelievable what they do. But sometimes, not for me, but I mean for the common person that loves to go see Everett Harp or Kenny G or they're going there to have a good time and feel a groove, and that's their thing. So then you start playing giant steps, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, whoa, it's not, and it's fine. It's apples and oranges. Everybody has their, but one of the things and actually keeps the band really happy is that we get to play all these different styles. We get to do all this, we get the funk, and then we can do our stuff, and then we get to head on salsa, and then we do things like giant steps and stuff like that. And I think that keeps us, getting gigs.
Okay.
So,
I want to let folks in the audience have a shot at asking some questions. So first one's always the toughest to extract, but we'll sit here patiently in the back. Yes.
When did you first meet Ray Vega?
Wow.
Concerts by the Sea, May 1988.
About 88. Ray was with Mongo Santa Maria's band, and I had been seeing Mongo's band for years before Ray even joined the Mongo band. What was the name of the Mike DiMartino used to play before you? Remember Mike?
Oh, yeah, and Eddie Allen, Carl Allen's brother was on.
That's right, Eddie Allen and Mike DiMartino. And Mike, he lived up in Rochester, right? Yeah, man. Yeah. Did you? Have you seen him?
Never met him.
Oh, man, I haven't seen that guy in years. I used to hang with him when he used to come in town, Mongo's band. But so I met Ray way back in the '80s in California, and he was the new trumpet player at that time. I said, man, that guy plays good, man. And we've been friends ever since. It's just we're apart now. He live up here, I live in Los Angeles. We never get to see each other, so I can hardly wait to go give him a hug right now, man. That's my brother right there.
Have you played with Poncho's band before?
I've sat in with Poncho, and then we used to go to things a lot of times with Tito when we were working with, because all of the bands were signed to Concord at the time, so we all wound up running into each other so much, especially when I first joined the band, when I joined Tito's band in the early 90s, and we were on the West Coast all the time.
Yeah, that show always sold out. When Ray left Mongo's band and went with Tito Puente's band, Tito Puente and Poncho Sanchez show, I mean, we used to sell out everywhere we went. We played everywhere, all over the United States. And so that's when we'd hang, and they would sit in with us, I'd sit in with them, or whatever, So then I got to know Ray even more and see Ray more when he was with Tito Puente's band. That's when we really hung right there.
Other questions?
personal problems you'd like to discuss?
Only one? We must have answered everything. Yes, please.
We had the great pleasure of having Tito Puente in town many years ago. And I stuck my neck out and said, look, I didn't hear a lot of Latin music growing up. I can recognize mambo, but I'd love to have some help separating the different dance rhythms and being able to understand, for instance, when somebody says rumba. I can't hear a rumba. I don't know exactly how it differs from mambo, etc., etc. Can you help me at all? Is there a clave on the stage?
I'm not a dance instructor. My name is Poncho Sanchez. I'm a band leader, and I help my band out. That's what I do. But no, I mean, there's a million things on the internet now you can go to. Look up, if you want to learn to play drums or timbales, bongo, if you want to learn to dance the mambo or cha-cha-cha or whatever they're dancing out there, you could actually see a lot of that stuff on the internet. And then Francisco plays with Dancing with the Stars. Francisco does that show from time to time. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can get off of the internet, you know what I'm saying? And if you really want to learn, there's books, you know, there's DVDs. I mean, you have that all available to you nowadays. Now, if you would ask me this question, 40 years ago, it would, I'd have to pull you aside and explain it all to you. But nowadays, we have the internet and DVDs and all that stuff. Man, you can look up all that stuff. I mean, you got to be careful because some of the stuff they don't know what they're talking about.
Yes.
But I mean, come on, you could find out what's right and what's wrong, or who's for real and who's not.
Yeah, when you see the guy with a piece of paper, this is how you play the conga.
Yeah.
You saw that? You saw that? And the guy is actually like,
Paper on the corner. He takes the paper on
see, you can get different sounds with a piece of paper.
I have your piece of paper.
Oh, God.
In the back, yes.
Mr. Sanchez, I want to thank you very much for songs like Watermelon Man and Cold Duck. I happen to be a dance instructor, so I can talk to you later.
There you go. What's going to happen now?
I'm Dave Larson. I teach a class, and I fell in love with salsa music a long time ago. I was horrible at it at the beginning and didn't know how to do it for a white guy. And I had a chance to fall in love with a number of the Conquero Picante group of music, and it was a real education for me. I teach a little class at UVM, and one of the things I use right away is, you need to go check out Poncho Sanchez and Ray Vega's right upstairs, and this is happening in your house. You need to check it out if you fall in love with it. I use the Watermelon Man in my classes to teach brand new people about Latin music that have never heard of it before. So there's a lot of dancers in the community. We've established a salsa community through classes that I've taught, and other people have gone forward beyond what I've done.
That's good.
And it's really interesting because it's always the Poncho Sanchez is always a connection, and then Ray Vega representing, that whole genre is like, go see this live. And we just have a lot of people in the community that are looking to be, to dance to this kind of music, and it's really rich. Along with the people that are listening, it's really wonderful. So my question is, are we going to hear Cold Duck tonight when you play? Because there'll be a bunch of other
Tomorrow night, not tonight.
Tomorrow night. Yeah, that's a $700 request, though. That's $700 a piece, though. Don't forget about Ray. He's the extra guy in the band now. Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions?
I just listened to an interview that Martin Cohen did with Don Elias.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the beginning of the recording, he was talking about conga players coming in outside of the culture. What was that like for you as a Mexican American coming up against Cuban drummers? Or I don't mean to say come up against them, but meeting them in that acceptance and that.
Yeah, exactly. What happened for me in Los Angeles, Mexican American, what happened to me every Sunday, they still do it, every Sunday at Griffith Park, the park on Sundays, the guys would play conga drums. And so we found out about it, we were like just out of high school, and we were learning to play pretty good. It was Ramon Banda and myself, and he took his timbales and I took my congas, went to the park, and right away there was a big tree, and there was about 30 guys, 40 guys underneath the tree, and they were all playing. So we went to jam with these guys, but they were banging on upside down trash cans and just whatever, and it got real boring like right away because they were just making a bunch of noise. And one of the guys said, hey, where the guys, the rumberos play? Up on the hill up there, there's a little flat area, and those guys up there, they're Cubans and Puerto Ricans. They play really good, And they said, you guys sound pretty good. You guys could go hear those guys or go sit in with them. So, oh, man, let's go up the hill. So we went up the hill. And then I'm standing there, and the guy was playing the quinto, which is a solo drum, the high-pitched conga drum, the solo drum. And there was about 10 guys playing, and they were singing chants and playing some Cuban rhythms and stuff. And I tapped the guy on the shoulder, and I said, hey, could I sit in, man? Could I play? And then he told me, are you Cuban? And I said, no. And he's playing, and are you Puerto Rican? I said, no. And he's playing, and I said, no. He says, what are you? And I said, I'm a Chicano, a Mexican American. And he goes, Chicanos can't play congas. And he kept playing, and he kept playing, and I go, how do you know you haven't heard me yet, And then, he was just not letting me, he was like, not letting me play, I said, cool, whatever, I waited for a minute, and he got up to go shake somebody's hand or do something over there, and I jumped on the quinto and started soloing, and he stepped back like this, and he stepped back, and he let me play for about 4 or 5 minutes, and he was just going like this to me, and then the little rumba stopped, and he goes, man, you sound great, man. He goes, your father's got to be Cuban or your mother's got to be Puerto Rican. I said, no, they're from Mexico, He goes, man, I never heard a Mexican play like that before. So that was my first, thing. And the other time, like after about, I don't know, like 8, 9 years went by, I had my band formed. I had a couple of records out, and we went to play the Village Gate in New York City for the first time. And Tito came to see us play. Tito, Caco, Patato, Manny Oquendo. These are my heroes, all these guys. But they weren't there to be nice to us. They came to see if we could really play, because they heard these these Mexican Americans came from Los Angeles and were supposed to be really good. And they were like this in the front row at the Village Gate, So it made us a little nervous, but I knew we had our thing together. Man, by the time we took our first break, man, we were all hanging with all of them, and we ended up being very good friends with all of them, and I miss them dearly. Tito, Ray was very close with Tito, and Mongo was my main man. Mongo, I named my oldest son after Mongo. I have a son named Mongo. That's how much I love Mongo. And my sons, they're 10 years apart. The other one's named Tito. I have a Tito and Mongo, that my sons. That's how big of a fan I am of this music,
Did I see a question? Yeah.
I'm curious how music sound to you, other music sound to you, like the new, like now reggaeton for you. Like how does it sound to you?
Not very good.
Silence.
Like shit. No, I'm not into reggaeton at all. To the reggaetonia, what's it called?
Yeah, no, he's more of a
reggaeton.
he's more of a bachata guy.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you very much. Boy, you. No, that what you're talking about is very commercial Latin music, and it's all right if you like that sort of thing. But I don't even own CDs like that, man. I own Charlie Parker records and T. Rodriguez records and James Brown, and that's all I listen to. Old Mongo stuff and charanga records, bachata or what all that stuff. I heard it a couple of times. I thought, no, it's okay. That's not for me, But if you like it, hey, good for you. It's good. You can't bet 1,000. You know what I mean?
Now, as a representative of a later generation, do you share the opinion? Or?
Oh well, I do a lot of studio work around Los Angeles, and I've gotten called to do a couple of those dates. Thankfully, I have not been available. No, music. It just kind of tends to go in waves. Things pop up that are popular, then it'll go away. Like salsa was on the 70s, forget it. It was like, I hear stories of, guys having 4 gigs. Willie Colon at 8 o'clock, Ray Barretto at 12, 2 in the morning. You gotta go play with Tommy Levencia, and it's like, holy moly, like 4 gigs a night,
And then they would
different clubs.
And then they would rehearse the band at
After-
4 o'clock in the morning
yeah.
after all the gigs. You
So-
want to be in the band?
Yeah, so it just goes in waves, and like Poncho said, if you like that, it's great. It's not at least my cup of tea. So a lot of musicians don't like it because it's really taking the place of where salsa was. And even in Puerto Rico, we were just there. We used to go and we used to be able to see, any given a bunch of bands playing at a club. Now it's like it's reggaeton all over the place. And hey, good for the reggaeton guys.
I'm just glad. I'm very proud of the fact that, I've made my living with not playing any of that kind of music. I just playing the music that I love. That's how I made that's how I'm making my life, and I own my own business, which is my band, and people don't see it that way sometimes, but it's a big business, especially nowadays when you got a 9-piece band that travels all over the world. It's a big business, you know, and income tax time and all that stuff, you know, health and welfare, pension checks, you know, all the guys in the band, we all belong to the Musicians Union. We all have our health and welfare. We have our pensions. This is a business, you know. So I'm glad and very proud to say I've gotten this far without any of that kind of commercial thing. So I'm glad I don't have to do that.
So are we, I suspect I can speak for the whole crowd. Yes, in the back. You, yeah.
Yes, I have a question. What are some ways that you tap into your creativity and allow for like new music to come through you, especially on those moments or times in your life when you might feel like a block? Or what are some ways that
She want to know how you let new music and inspiration come to you, particularly if you're having a mental block and you're trying to create something.
You know, once again, I just do what you know, I'm not completely opposed to maybe have some, well, I don't know, maybe some new type of music come in and play with my, because I've done like New Orleans music mixed with Latin music, New Orleans style music, and you know, we've done blues. You know, we're talking about the blues, straight up blues.
Funk, you had
Funk,
one
soul.
with Eddie Harris. And
Yeah, I think
the
with Eddie,
Crusaders.
the Jazz Crusaders. So you know, I've done some of them things. I just don't know if I'm going to go with a rap album or anything like that pretty soon, you know, or anything like that, you know. And I don't even know the latest thing that's out there. There could be something other than rap that I don't even know about, you know, because I don't pay attention to that.
like your music? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I guess maybe because you've been practicing for so long that...
I'm sorry, one more time, just one more time.
How do you tap into like your creative juices?
Me?
How do we tap into our... Oh, okay, I got it now.
I get a beer.
A couple.
No, well, it kind of works both ways. Like, I don't know if people have iPhones, but the way I come up with my ideas is I could be I could be asleep at 3 a.m, and then I'll wake up, go to the restroom, all of a sudden I get an idea. So I grab my iPhone and I start singing it, you know, over and over again, because you'll forget it. So you gotta grab it when it comes to you. You know, one of the great stories, Horace Silver, all the songs they ever wrote. I got to meet Horace and talk to him. Well, he's still with us, but and he said that what he would do is he get a melody and go to the piano, play to the recorder, play blah blah, grab the tape, throw it in a bunch. So he said he had a stack of tapes. So whenever a new record would come, he had to write a new record. He'd go through the tapes and he'd grab about 5 or 6 of them, and then he'd go, okay, and then he expand the ideas. He says, for 30 years he had just tape after tape after tape. So whenever it was almost like, I need to write myself a record. I need 10 songs. Okay, I'll grab this one here. I'll grab that one here, and that's how he did it.
But you know, it could come at any time. But it's true for me too. Most of the songs I've written or thought of, melodies, lines, it's always been in the morning for me. I wake up in the morning, I got an idea. Where's my recorder or something, you know? And that's happened for me a lot. But it could come anytime, any place. You hear a melody or a line. Like we were somewhere when we stopped at a gas station or something, right?
Yeah. We were in a van on our way back from the Concord Jazz Festival. You started singing some weird thing, and I was like, "Oh, it's kind of cool." He goes, I'm just babbling."
Yeah, I sang. I was
Shing-a-ling.
I was in the van and I sang Shing-a-ling, pa baila, y goza mi son, Shing-a-ling. I was just saying that, and Francisco says, "Hey man, that sounds pretty hip, man."
Yeah.
We made a tune out of it, and it did very, very well. You know, it's on our live DVD from the Montreux Jazz Festival. You know, and it did very well. You know, so it just comes to you, and then you say, "Oh, okay, let's work on that idea," and then you start building from there. And then you spend a couple hours building it, and you say, "Oh, you know what?" And then we start rehearsing it. And then at the rehearsal, you end up changing stuff too, like, let's take that section out and let's put this in, or do this first, and then we'll go to that section. You know, you just put it together like anything else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but as far as getting last thing I'm gonna say, as getting inspiration, it definitely helps. Like, pay attention to what's going on around you. Like, you might hear, like you're in the elevator and then some stupid music is going, ding, 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 ding. And you go, oh my God, that's kind of like, somebody will play a little phrase and like, oh, oh, you know what? If you add that to this other song I heard, and blah blah blah, even the birds, you can come up with something. I come up with a couple of ideas just from listening to birds. So
I think we got time for one more, if anybody else has a question. Yep.
Poncho, as a percussionist that comes obviously out of the great lineage, you mentioned Chano Pozo and of course Armando people like Armando Peraza, Burrito Collazo, Mongo Santa Maria. And I mean, I worked with Mongo for 4.5 years, and I'm not just saying this because Poncho, but Mongo loved Poncho so much. I just want you to know that. Maybe you don't, because I think when Mongo left, a lot of us didn't get the opportunity to sit with him and get to say goodbye in the proper way. But Mongo loved you like there's no tomorrow. But
Wow.
you're coming out of that lineage of other drummers also that never didn't pay a lot of time in the States, for instance, like people like Tjader, which I know you're familiar with.
Yeah.
In your travels right now, because things are changing so much in what we call this music, Latin jazz. There's so many changes. Do you see anybody coming up that's young, of a next generation, that's even concerned with one iota of the dues that were paid by people? I'm very concerned that in 10 years, a lot of young players are not going to know who Mongo was, or Tito, and I'm very concerned about it. Do you see any young person who's willing to pick up that tradition? Because I'm hearing so many other guys not wanting to do it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, you know, and that would be a very sad thing, man, because we made our lives with that, you know. But, you know, I don't go out and hear a lot of music anymore. I used to, you know, the guys used to always call me, invite me to go, but I said, Poncho don't like to go out anymore. And I don't, man. We go all over the world. We travel all the time. When I go home, I like to be at home, man. You know what I mean? Be with family. And I get CDs from time to time from different people. But, man, you know, it's really hard to say young cats that are coming up. Most of them all want to play timba music, and they want to play like Giovanni, you know. Giovanni's a very good friend of ours, and we love him, and Giovanni is a great, incredible conga drummer, incredible. He can play faster than I can think, you know. I mean, yeah, and he can play old school. But the young kids, all they want to learn is the, you know, and then they can't play the tumbao, you know what I mean? They can't lay it down, you know. So it is definitely happening, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But myself, Francisco, what do you think? Who's
okay.
young that's coming up trying to do that?
Who was here? Well, who was here at the Brantford meeting?
Justin Faulkner, the trap drummer.
No. I'm saying of the audience. Did anybody come to that?
Yeah.
Okay, Brantford Marcellus. There's a video, and there's no kids in here. Okay, there's a video that they ask him, like, what have you learned from your students? And he says, I learned that they're full of shit. Reason being is everybody now wants to be told after they play 16 bars of a solo, they're like, oh my God, you're great. Oh, I'm going to hire you. And if you tell them, that was average. You need to go, if you tell them, and they don't like it, they're going to go to daddy, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? This guy, teacher, gone. And the guy loses his job because he's telling him, hey, get better. So, you know, it's a me. It's all about me. So nobody wants to do the work. I, as a trombone player, I had to learn about Jack Teagarden. I had to learn about J.J. Johnson. I had to learn about Carl Fontana, Frank Rossellino, Jimmy Bosch, Barry Rogers. I mean, it was, and when I say I learned their solos. I learned what they were all about. I learned the context. I used to have a tape. I make little tidbits of their solos, one after another, and I listen to that tape over and over until they would break. Because I was like, okay, my teacher's like, you need to like learn what came before you to understand where you're gonna go. So what happens is, with the question he's posing, there's really nobody I know. I don't know about New York. I don't live there. But in L.A., there's just a lot of guys that don't have the reverence and the respect to say, well, you know, Mongo, man, oh, he's amazing. Tatawinas, amazing. You know, even Even with Ray Barretto, who was a lot more, a lot of people associate him with salsa bands, and he had a great salsa orchestra. But I mean, he's in a ton of jazz records. He's in a ton of jazz records.
Yep.
So it's everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to say, okay, you know what? I'm ready to play with Poncho Sanchez. I'm ready to play with Tito Puente. I'm gonna go play in New York now. I'm gonna be #1 conguero. He goes, well, I just need a marcha. Okay, so this is the marcha. He's like, no. You ever heard Mongo Santa Maria? Who? It's like, okay, you got to learn the history. Why do we learn history in school? To learn, not to learn where we're coming from. Same exact thing with the drum. Same exact thing with the horn. So unless we get rid of that me, and learn the us, then I think it's gonna be an uphill battle.
Ray, the last time Mongo played was with us. Mongo came to see us perform at Carnegie Hall, and he came. When I got to New York, I called him, told him we're playing Carnegie Hall the day before we were actually going to play, and Mongo said, Poncho, I want to go, so come to the back door, we'll set everything up for you. And of course, the maestro came with his suit on, the way he was, always sharp, and he came in and smiling, and I said, wow, now Mongo's coming to see me play at Carnegie Hall. I was like, I could hardly deal with it, And then I was taping my hands. You know how Mongo used to always tape his hands? See, he's taping his hands, and I learned by watching him, I'm taping my hands, and he's looking at me. He was looking at me, and I could see a little gleam in his eye. He's looking at, and of course, I talked to him in Spanish, and I told him, Maestro, Mongo, I said, you want to play tonight? And he looked at me and said, si tú quieres, Poncho. He said, if you want me to. And I told him, you're going to leave it to me? It's a done deal, baby. You're on, And he goes, okay, Poncho, dame. And he started taping his hands real fast, like that quick. And he was a surprise guest that night. Nobody knew he was even in there. And of course, when he got a standing ovation when he walked out there. Then we did Afro Blue, of course. He got a standing ovation after his solo, and then he got a standing ovation after he left the stage. Man, I was like, that. And yeah, he passed away a couple of weeks after that, man.
He played good, though. He really played
yeah,
good, man.
and so the last time Mongo ever played in public was with our band, man, at Carnegie Hall, of all places.
Well, listen, I want to thank Poncho and Francisco. Fantastic session. And not that you need reminding, but the band's playing up in the theater tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Tonight at 8 and 10, Gretchen Parlato is here. I think it might be sold out already, but
I think there's standing room tickets.
okay, standing room tickets, I'm told. I'm going to be back here tomorrow at 4 speaking with Greg Tardy, and Greg's band's going to be playing here at 6, and then Poncho's band upstairs at 8. So
With Ray Vega as our
and
guest.
Ray Vega will also be with Poncho. So a lot of great music in the last 2 days of the festival. Please come out and support it. Thank you for coming out and supporting us this afternoon. See you tonight. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob.